Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to open with my expression of thanks to all the organizers of today's event. It is very clear to me at this point, even more so than it was 30 years ago, what an extraordinary privilege it was to study Yeshivat Harretzion, and especially to learn Torah by Rabbi and Lichtenstein. I'm going to limit my opening introductory remarks just because we're short on time. But the experience of studying by Rabbi Lichtenstein, the exposure to his Shiur Yomi, to his Shiur Klali, to his Sichot, I think would be analogous to taking a helicopter ride up and being shown vistas in the world of Torah, to be given and offered a panoramic perspective of Torah that otherwise would not be attainable. But in addition to that, just the exposure to him and to his personality, how he carried himself with piety, with humility, with his vigor and with his passion, to see how he handled complex issues with his sweeping knowledge, with his sensitivity, with his nuance, and to hear how he spoke to people and how he listened to people. Rav Yaakov Fisher, who was the Mashgiach Ruchani in the yeshiva at the time, once compared the experience of speaking to Rav Lichtenstein as the experience of speaking to a giant life-size ear sitting in front of you. Just to be exposed to his personality and to his character was the extraordinary privilege of a lifetime. And as a result, it's a sacred task and also a privilege and an honor to share Divrei Torah together with you this morning in his memory. The topic that I've chosen for this morning, the drama and message of Sinai, is apropos of these days and weeks as we count toward the Yontiv of Shavuos and our own Kabbalas HaTorah. I want to focus on that event, the event of Ma'amad Har Sinai, and how it informs our own relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our relationship with His Torah. The Torah, in the Psukim in Parshas Va'aschan in source number 1, use exceedingly cautious language in instructing us and commanding us to remember the event of Ma'amad Har Sinai. If you look at the Psukim in Dvarim Parak Dalet in source number 1, Rak hishamar lecha shmor nafshecha ma'od, pen tishkach es hadvarim asher ra'u einecha, ufen yasurim levavcha kol yemei chayecha, V'hodatim levanecha v'levnei vanecha. Yom asher madata lefnei Hashem Elokecha b'chorev b'mor Hashem elai. Hakel li asam v'ashmiyim es devar asher yilmedun liyirausi kol hayamim asher im chayim al ha'adama v'espneihem yilamedun. You'll notice in the Torah's opening formulation the exceeding caution that it uses, both in the language that it uses and also in its rapid-fire repetition of that caution, of that exhortation to us. Rak hishamar lecha ushmor nafshecha Ma'od, pen, tishkach es hadvarim asher ro'inecha, ufen, yasurim levavcha, v'hodatim levanecha levnei vanecha. Exceeding caution, exhortation to remember the event, to remember the dvarim of Sinai. I want to spend a few moments together with you this morning exploring what are these dvarim that we're being commanded to remember and to hold on to. What are the dvarim that are the focus of the psukim? And on one level, the dvarim in the context of Aseres HaDvarim and Ma'amad Har Sinai are the words of Torah, the teachings of Torah themselves. Divrei Torah, Dvar Hashem. And in fact, the Mishnah Maseches Avos in source number 2 tells us, Reb Dostai, Reb Yanai, Mishum Rabbi Meir, Omer, Kol shocheach davar echad mi mishnaso. The word davar, davar echad mi mishnaso, mala lav akasav kilu mischai benafsho shenemar, rak hishamar lecha, Ushmor nafshecha ma'od. Your nefesh, mischai benafsho, is at stake here. Pentishkach es hadvar asher ro'inecha. In the opinion of the reading of the Mishnah Maseches Avos, the dvarim that we're being enjoined to remember and to hold on to are the words of Torah itself. One has to hold on to the memory of those words, of those instructions, of the teachings themselves that were transmitted at Sinai. And if one does not do so, ushmor nafshecha ma'od, one is mischai benafsho for not holding on to the messages and the content of Sinai. Similarly, the Gemara in Menachos and Daf Tzadi Tadim in bed in source number 3 quotes in rapid-fire succession, Amar Reish Lakish, Kol mishakeach davar echad me talmudo over belav, shneimar hishamar lecha, ushmor nafshecha ma'od pen tishkach es hadvarim. If one forgets their Torah, one is in violation of a lav d'oraisa, focusing on the language of hishamar and pen, that's the language of lo taseh, one violates a lav in the Torah. If you look at the second line, Ravina Amar, hishamar upen shnei lavim ninhu, one violates 2 lavim in the Torah, both hishamer and pen. And finally, the opinion of Rav Nachbar Yitzchak Amar, bishlosha lavim, you violate 3 lavim in the Torah if one forgets their Torah that they studied, Hishamer ushmar nafshecha pentishkach es hadvarim. The dvarim of the pasuk are the content, the substance of Matan Torah, the teachings that were transmitted at that moment. Forgetting that Torah violates 1, 2, or 3 lavim in the Torah. And in fact, many of the Moni HaMitzvos, when they count this commandment of remembering Matan Torah, remembering Maggid Har Sinai, focus on the memory of the Torah itself, of the teachings of the Torah itself. So for example, the Sefer Yereim in Mitzvah Tav Tet, not on the source sheet, says there's a lav doraisa, pentishkach hasadvarim, tav divrei yotzrecha, tein al libecha tamed. You should hold on to the words of Torah in your heart at all times. The Smak, Rav Yitzchok Mikorvil in source number 4 says, shlo lifrosh minat Torah, to separate, to depart from the Torah that violates the lav doraisa. The Smag, Rav Moshe Mikutzi in source number 5, similarly says, haporish minat Torah, afilu zakein muflag, over below ta'aseh shenemar, ufen yasuru milvavcha kol yimei chayecha. And in addition, the Shari Tshuva Rabbi Yon in source number 6 likewise counts this as a lav minat Torah. I would add as well that the Smag and the Shari Tshuva Rabbi Yonah both quote the viewpoint of Ravina specifically, that one violates 2 lavim in the Torah if one forgets their Torah, one forgets the substance, the content of the teachings of Sinai. I would add as an aside, and this was a moral lesson that Rav Lichtenstein always communicated, was that forgetfulness is not just an intellectual failing, but a moral failing. And I would add to that and qualify it in the following way, that only under those circumstances where it is a moral failing, only then would violate this lav in the Torah. Ufen yasuru, someone who actively is meisir the words of Torah from their lave. Forgetfulness is part of the human condition. And depending on one's life circumstance, it could be even more challenging. But if it is a product of moral failing, of not investing yourself, of not trying hard enough, of turning toward vain pursuits, under those circumstances, forgetting the substance of Torah would violate this lav dorais as recorded by all of these Moni HaMitzvos. The Ramban, for one, shifted the entire conversation and the focus of the pasuk, not so much on the dvarim, on the words of Torah themselves and the substance of the teachings of Sinai. The Ramban shifted the conversation from the content to the setting, to the actual event of Maggid Har Sinai. The Ramban, both in his Hasagos on the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvos, as well in his commentary on the Torah in Parshas Va'eschanan, shifts the focus toward the setting, holding on to the memory of Maggid Har Sinai is really the focal point of the Torah's command. If you look at the Ramban in source number 7 in his Sefer HaMitzvos, the Ramban writes, HaMitzvah HaShniyah, the second lotah say that the Rambam omitted from his count of Tarek Mitzvos, is Shelo Nishkach Maggid Har Sinai, V'lo Nasir Oto Mida'atenu, Aval Yiyeh, Einenu V'libeinu Sham Kol Hayamim. We should not forget Maggid Har Sinai, not the words of Torah, but Maggid Har Sinai, the event of Sinai in which those words were delivered. Einenu v'libeinu sham kol hayamim, both our eyes and our heart should be attached to that moment throughout all times. Likewise, if you look at the Ramban in his Perush al Torah in source number 8, if you look 3 lines in, the Ramban writes, Chazar v'amar, rak ani mazhircha ma'od lihishamer v'lishmor atzmecha ma'od ma'od. As if the one, double shmira and ma'od of the pasuk was not enough, the Ramban adds in an extra ma'od just for good measure. L'shmor atzmecha ma'od ma'od, l'skor mi'ayin bo elecha hamitzvos. Shlo tishkach Maggid Har Sinai mikol advar asher ra'u einecha, hakolot v'halapidim et kvodo v'et godlo udvarav asher shamata sham mitoch ha'esh. V'todia kol advar asher ra'u einecha b'ma'amad hanichbad hahu, levanecha v'livnei vanecha ad olam. The Ramban shifts the focus from memory of the substance of the content of the teachings of Maggid Har Sinai to the event itself, and to remember that awesome, awe-inspiring moment in which Torah was given to the Jewish people. The way he describes it, the Ma'amad Hahu, that awesome event should be ingrained in our minds and also transmitted to subsequent generations. There is an important difference in how the Ramban treats this topic in his Hasagos on the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvos versus how he treats it in his Perush al Torah. The two diverge somewhat from one another. If you look at the Ramban in his Sefer HaMitzvos in source number 7, he notes that the Rambam omitted this lo taseh from his list of Taryag mitzvos. The Rambam does not count the lo taseh of not forgetting Ma'amad Har Sinai, or the teachings of Sinai. And therefore, the Ramban is correcting him. This belongs on that list of Taryag. There's an additional mitzvahs lo taseh that was omitted. But he only makes that comment in the Shichachas Halavim. He does not make a parallel comment in the Shichachas Ha'asin, the mitzvos aseh that the Rambam omitted. But in his Perush al Torah, he very clearly argues that this is not only a mitzvahs lo taseh, but a mitzvahs aseh as well. If you look at source number 8, now on the second page, if you look at the second line in, the Ramban there very clearly states, V'hinei kodem shiazkir hadibro shenemru sham, hizhir b'mitzvahs lo taseh, shlo nishkach davar min hamamad hahu, v'lo nasireu melibenu la'olam. And then he adds, V'tziva b'mitzvahs aseh, shenodia bo l'chol zareinu midor l'dor, kol ma shehaya sham b're'iyah uv'shmiya. So not only is it a mitzvahs lo taseh, not to forget hamamad hahu, that setting of the deliverance of the Torah to Am Yisrael, there's also a mitzvahs aseh, in his opinion, to transmit that to the next generation, to describe and to transmit that to subsequent generations. So the Ramban here, both in his Hasagos and in his Perush al Torah, shifts the focus from the substance and the content of Sinai to the setting, to the event itself, and to hold on to our memory of that event. There's a very clear question that is posed against the Ramban's view from the Gemara in Kiddushin on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph and source number 9. There's a debate in the Gemara whether or not a grandfather has an obligation to teach Torah to his grandson. And there's a debate in the Gemara whether or not that is merely a parental responsibility of a father to his son, or whether or not that extends and spans generations to include grandparents to grandchildren as well. And the viewpoint that expands the accordion to include multi-generational learning, to include grandparents as well, is based on this pasuk, V'hodatam livanecha v'livnei vanecha, that it introduces and teaches us the obligation of grandparents to teach Torah to their grandchildren. If you look just for brevity, at source number 9, 3 lines in, toward the end of the line, the Gemara there quotes the statement of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Kol malamid es ben b'no Torah, Ma'ala lav hakasav kilu kibla mehar Sinai. Once the teaching of Torah is not just 2 generations, but spans multiple generations, from there it can be expanded like an accordion to reach all the way back to Sinai and to project forward all the way into the future. And it's kilu kibla mehar Sinai. Shne'emar, v'hodatim levanecha v'livnei vanecha v'samach lei yom asher amadta lifnei Hashem Elokecha b'chorev. Now in the context of this Gemara, v'hodatim levanecha, what is the focus of this Gemara? Kol malamid es ben b'no Torah. The focus seems to be on the instruction of substantive Talmud Torah, actual learning from one generation to the next. And as a result, there's a question that is posed to the Ramban: how can you shift the focus from the substance and the words of Torah to the setting and the event of Torah in light of how the Gemara in Kiddushin interprets the pasuk? The Ramban addresses this question not in his Perush al Torah, but back in his commentary on the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvos in source 7, and he gives a very important and instructive answer to the question. If you look 3 lines from the bottom in source number 7, the Ramban raises the Gemara in Kiddushin as a challenge to his perspective, and he answers that challenge in the following way: V'al titeh b'zeh mipnei drasham b'rishon shel Kiddushin, Levanecha v'livnei vanecha b'limud haTorah livnei banim, ki limud emunas haTorah hu halimud b'Torah. In the Ramban's opinion, there is no division between the study of Torah itself and the study of emunas haTorah. That which strengthens and provides a foundation for the rest of the study of Torah, that itself is limud haTorah. And therefore there is no contradiction between the Gemara saying in Kiddushin, Kol malamed ben b'no Torah, and the way the Ramban understands the focus of the pasuk, which is relaying and transmitting the awesome setting and environment in which the Torah was given. If that strengthens emunas haTorah, that serves as a foundation upon which all of Torah can be built, that itself is the study of Torah, and hence there is no challenge to his perspective. The Rambam omits from his Sefer HaMitzvos any mention of this obligation to recall and to recount the memory of Sinai. Neither the Dvarim, the instructed teachings of Sinai, nor the Dvarim, the Kolos and the Brakim, the Eish and the Anan, the event of Sinai, the Ramban omits any mention in his Sefer HaMitzvos of an obligation to recall and remember Matan Torah and Mamad Har Sinai. And there's some discussion amongst the Achronim why he omitted that from his list in Sefer HaMitzvos. Just for time constraints, we'll focus on one approach that is developed, which further shifts the focus from national memory about the teachings and the setting of Sinai into a different realm entirely. The Megillas Esther at least believes that it stems from a comment of Rashi on the Pasuk in Parshas Va'eschanan. If you look at Rashi in source number 14, Rashi comments, Rak hishamar lecha, pentishkach es hadvarim, az kishlo tishkechu osam, v'ta'asum ala mitatam, techashvu chachamim univonim, v'im ta'avtu otam, mitoch shechacha, techashvu shotim. The focus here is not on the memory of the teachings of Sinai or of the event of Sinai, but rather how that national memory translates into the world of action, into how we live our lives, into committed action, and how we uphold halacha in our daily lives. Memory is only so important. Memory has to inform how we live our lives in practice on a daily basis. And therefore, in Rashi's opinion, the dvarim that we're meant to hold on to and remember for all generations is not just a memory of the event, but how the memory of that event and its teachings translates into the world of committed actions. V'ta'asum alamitatam, faithful, loyal adherence to the halacha, and as well, im tavtu otam, techashvu shoftim, not corrupting the halacha that was given to us to follow, not corrupting that, and if so, we're no longer considered to be an am chacham v'navon, but rather chas milahazki are to be regarded as shotim. And in that opinion, the Megillas Esther argues, might be the basis for the Rambam's view. He omits any mention of the memory of Sinai, neither the teachings nor the event, because the importance of that is how to translate that into our daily lives through committed action. And as such, it really is a reflection of a quality of the klalios haTorah. Our observance of the entirety of Torah does not occupy a separate space as a separate mitzvah in the minyan ha-mitzvos, but rather really is a quality that underlies the totality of our commitment towards shmiras ha-mitzvos. When we think about the memory of the event of Sinai, what is the importance of that memory? Why is it so important to hold on to that awesome, awe-inspiring event with the kolos and brakim, the eish, the anan, the arafel? Why is it so important to hold on to the event itself and not just the teachings of the Torah and how they translate into the world of mitzvos? And on one level, the benefit and the importance of this memory might be more cognitive. If you look toward the top of the second page, later on in source number 8, the Ramban himself indicates that the to'elet b'mitzvah hazot is gedolah ma'od. There is great benefit and impact of this mitzvah in the national memory of the Jewish people. And it goes on to explain that the Jewish people experienced direct revelation on a mass level, and the certitude and the definitive belief that develops therefrom is something that is so important for the longevity of our commitment to our Torah mitzvos throughout all the generations. Since God revealed himself on a mass level directly to the entire Am, and every father and every mother and every parenting team and all grandparents transmit that to the next generation and generations afterward, the definitiveness, the certitude, and our belief in the divine origin of Torah is held clearly and firmly within our nation. And therefore, the to'elet b'mitzvah azot is gedolah ma'od. It instills within us the conviction with absolute certainty that the origin of our Torah is divine, and we commit ourselves as a result. There's another dimension to this memory of the event of Matan Torah that goes beyond simply our cognitive certitude that it actually happened. And this is something that Rav Lichtenstein develops in his treatment of the topic. If you jump forward to source number 17 for a moment, in a sikha he gave on Leil Shavuot in 2002, he quoted this Ramban, and he notes that our memory of Mamad Har Sinai, not just the content of Torah, but the event in which it was given, is important on a dual level. Number one, on a cognitive plane, we recall and understand the events of the past. But he goes on to say toward the end of the second line, as well as on the experiential and existential planes. It needs to penetrate your innermost self. You need to re-experience the awe and the power of Maggid Har Sinai, feeling it in the depths of your personality. And remembering the revelation at Sinai, we are called upon not only to re-experience the events of the revelation itself, but to attempt to attain greater closeness to God. There is a cognitive element to our memory of Maggid Har Sinai, but there's also an experiential and existential element to it. We re-experience the power and the drama and the awe of that original setting. And we hope that it penetrates inward and leaves a mark on our inner soul. And in so doing, brings us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the process. Rav Lichtenstein noted the pasuk, the description of Parshas Va'aschanan, Panim b'fanim diber Hashem imachem bahar mitoch ha'esh. The description of direct communication, direct, imminent relationship of panim b'fanim is a characterization that would seem to be reserved only for Nevuas Moshe. And yet the Torah uses that exact description to describe the event and the setting of Maggid Har Sinai. Panim b'fanim, the directness, the imminence of that relationship, of directly feeling HaKadosh Baruch Hu's closeness, and to develop a reciprocal closeness back to him in response. There's a comment of the Magen Avram in Siman Samech, where he quotes a passage from the RAL, which he notes that some have the belief, the conviction, that we have sheish zechiros within our national memory. And on the one hand, many people recite that after davening as a list of zechiros that they recite when davening is over. But the RAL saw allusions to each of the zechiros in the Birchos Kriyat Shema, and specifically in the brach of Avarab that precedes our recitation of Kriyat Shema. And if you look at the Arizal's comment, quoted by the Magen Avram, he writes, Isa bekavanos uviksavim, vazchiros halalu he mitzvos aseh, lachein kishiomar uvanu bacharta mikolam velashon, yizkor matan Torah. On one level, we remember matan Torah, the deliverance of Torah to the Jewish people. But we go on, the Kerav Tanu l'shimcha hagadol, the Kerav Tanu is Maggid Har Sinai. The Kirvat Elokim that was experienced, the imminence and direct relationship that we felt in that moment of panim b'fanim, diber Hashem imachem, that imminent direct relationship, the kirva that comes along with it, is also something that we look to re-experience whenever we remember Maggid Har Sinai. Now this reenactment and re-experience of the Kirvat Elokim of Maggid Har Sinai expresses itself on numerous planes within different halachic institutions. On one level, it expresses itself in the mitzvah of Hakel, once every 7 years, when the entire Kahal would join together in the Azar of the Beis HaMikdash for Shmiya, for Limud, for Yira, all the languages and terms that were used to describe Maggid Har Sinai itself. A leader of the Jewish people ascends a bima in the center of the Azar, surrounded by the entire Am, reminiscent of Moshe Rabbeinu ascending Har Sinai to receive and deliver the Torah to the entire nation that was Misaviv, standing around the mountain down below. So on a national level, we re-experience Maggid Har Sinai through the mitzvah of Hakel. On a communal level, we re-experience Maggid Har Sinai through the institution of Kriyas HaTorah. Rav Soloveitchik writes about this in numerous places. One of his Yahrzeit Shiur on Takanas Moshe explores this theme. He writes about it toward the end of his essay, Uvikashte Misham, and in much of the secondary literature summarizing the Rav's Torah, Kriyas HaTorah is essentially, on a communal level, a re-experience of the drama of Maggid Har Sinai. The need for a minyan, the obligation to stand of the Baal Koreh, maybe of the Tzibor, the discussions about reciting Baruch Hu beforehand and treating it as a davar shebikdusha, reading it b'tam elyon or b'tam tachton, it being read Aydei Sarsur, all of these halachos of Kriyas HaTorah reflect that aspect of being a reenactment, a re-experience of Maggid Har Sinai. But it also plays itself out on the personal plane as well, in our own individual limud HaTorah. That whenever we encounter Dvar Hashem, whenever we open a Sefer to engage in Talmud Torah, there's an element of Sinai that is present. There's a reenactment, a re-experiencing of Maggid Har Sinai that is present in each of those moments. The Gemara in Brachos and also the Gemara in Yuma tell us that whenever a person sits down to learn, they should learn Be'ema, V'yira, V'retet, V'zeya, with a sense of trepidation. The Gemara in Yuma cites the pasuk, Gilu Bara'ada. There's both great joy and also great trepidation in that moment whenever we have contact with Dvar Hashem, awakening the experience of the original moment of Maggid Har Sinai, where we also felt that great joy, but also trepidation in the awesomeness of the encounter. And this is something that Rav Lichtenstein highlighted in his treatment of the topic. We're short on time, so I'll just focus on two quotes together with you before we conclude. If you look at source number 22, in interpreting the Sifri in Parshas Eikev, that any act of Talmud Torah is an act of avoda, and avoda shebelev at that, Rav Lichtenstein writes that in order for Talmud Torah to have that quality of being an avoda shebelev, there has to be an element of encounter, in which we encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the act of study. If you look at the third line, he writes, this encounter in and of itself is two-directional. On the one hand, Talmud Torah reflects the person's desire to know God, who spoke and brought the world into existence, in the sense of know God of your Father, while on the other hand, Talmud Torah enables the Shekhinah to enter the person's soul. There's both a direction of movement, of us reaching out to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's a reciprocal movement of the Shekhinah entering our soul in that very moment. And that encounter motif is central to Talmud Torah, especially as an expression of avodah shebelev. I see that our time is almost up, if not up already. So I'll conclude with just one final comment. Rav Lichtenstein quotes the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, if you look at source number 23 for a moment, where David HaMelech instructs his son Shlomo, V'ata Shlomo b'ni, Da el Elokei avicha ve'avdeyu b'leiv shalem u'v'nefesh chafetza, ki kol levavot doresh Hashem v'chol yetzer machshivot mevin, im tidrashenu yimatzei lach. That the enterprise of Talmud Torah is essentially this act of Da et Elokei avicha ve'avdeyu. Seek out, know, serve your Father, the rock from which you are hewn. Seek out and know your Father, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kol levavot doresh Hashem. He reciprocally inquires and looks into your heart. Im tidrashen, if you search for him, yimatzei lach. He will be found to you, and he'll make himself present to you. He will enter into your soul. And it's this encounter that is so central to the experience of Talmud Torah, in looking at our own personal limud as a reenactment and a re-experiencing of the original awesome Maggid Har Sinai of Panim B'Fanim Diber Hashem, of God speaking to us directly. I'll just end with one final comment. If you jump all the way to source 28, the last source in the source sheet, in the book Mivakshe Panecha, Seeking His Presence, the conversations that Rav Lichtenstein had with Rav Chaim Sabato, in a very honest and genuine way, he readily acknowledges that this is not an experience that we could achieve every single time we sit down to learn Torah, or attend a Shiur, or open up a Sefer and try to learn. He writes, if you look there a couple lines in, 5 lines in, true, one will not experience this unique feeling in full manifestation all the time. If someone tells me that every time he enters the study hall, the Beit Midrash, and opens up the books of the Rambam, the Ravid or the Ksot, he feels inspired, I truly envy him. I cannot say that I feel this exalted feeling all the time, but I truly feel that there are profound moments like this in the life of the believer, and that such moments leave their mark on every fiber of his being. It's not a guarantee. It doesn't happen every single time. If Rav Lichtenstein can say that, we can all have the honesty and the genuineness to acknowledge and to recognize that for ourselves, each one in our own humble way. And yet what Rav Lichtenstein is articulating here is that I've had those experiences, and I'm confident that I could have them, and I see the potential in every moment to re-experience that imminence and directness of relationship with the Nosein HaTorah. And my past experiences and my belief in the potential of every moment of Talmud Torah awakens within me that hope, that aspiration. And to quote him from the continuation of that passage, it is my prayer that the good and forgiving Lord will know where my hopes and aspirations are, and to accept that and to receive that with open arms as my act of service, of avodah shebelev, in trying to cultivate a direct relationship with him. And hopefully if you could reach out to him in that way, belev chafetza, im tidrashenu yimatzei lach, he will make himself readily available and enter into our own soul to further cement and to deepen that relationship together with him.